The Philadelphia Eagles just made a sneaky good pickup, a really sneaky good signing in former Atlanta Falcon, Olamide Zaccheaus. This is a young man that gives me a little bit of Greg Ward Jr. vibes, but I got to be honest, when you go to the film and you go to the advanced analytics on this young man, yeah, this is not a volume catcher. This is not someone who's going to move the needle crazy far for the Eagles. But what he is a solid rotational piece, and he is productive when you need him to be productive when the opportunities arise for this young man. All right, guys, without further ado, I want to get into a deep, advanced study on Olamide Zaccheaus and talk about what we just did. All right, y'all, let's get it. What's up, Cerebral Football fans? My name is Steven Hyder. This is Gate City Sports Channel. As I said, Olamide Zaccheaus, I think, is a very, very sneaky good signing for the Philadelphia Eagles for a couple of reasons. The first thing is there's something going on over the last few years with the Philadelphia Eagles front office in terms of when they kind of get to this point to where they need to identify somebody. They have to fill out roster spaces, right? They're trying to protect themselves for the draft, right? They don't want to be desperate at a given position and be forced to reach. There has been a common trend they're doing here with like kind of the not huge name free agents, which is kind of a return to Philadelphia. You know, we saw that one of two ways Eagles work this out. Either they're returning back to local products or they're returning back to products and players that know the coaches. For example, Kaiser White last year, right? Local product of Philadelphia. They kind of went out there and they secured this guy that knows the area. And in the same breath, you can say Zach Pascal, product and someone who knew the coaching staff, right? Well, Olamide Zaccheaus is once again a return back to Philadelphia. This is a young man who is from Philly. He played at St. Joseph's Preps. And by the way, he was a part of the 2019 Philadelphia Eagles local pro day when he was coming out of the University of Virginia. So right away, that drew my interest, guys, that we got a local product coming back to play here in Philadelphia, which is always kind of a cool story. I want to talk about what this young man is in terms of the physical measurements and just kind of the athlete that he stacks up to be. And I'm going to give you the honest-to-God truth about everything that I'm seeing. He's 5'8", 188 pounds with a 31-inch arm reach and an 8.75, 8.75-inch hand measurement. Shorter guy, a little stockier built, though, for a shorter guy. You know, when you're 5'8", almost 190 pounds, he's pretty solid. His testing numbers, the testing results, right? These are not going to blow you out of the water, but give me a second. I'm going to add context to what's going on here. To begin with, he put up a 4.4940 at his pro day, a 1.5810 split, a 2.6220 split, 12 bench reps, a 35.5-inch vertical, 125-inch broad jump, a 4.19 short shuttle, and a 7-second three-cone. The first thing I'm going to tell you right now is just looking at this from a scouting sense. What can I tell you about this young man? The 10 split would indicate to me that 10 split along with that bench press reps, he's not the strongest dude in the world, right? A lot of people, they'll talk about this is a guy where, a CNS athlete, where they're talking about the central nervous system, right? They're saying they're explosive athletes, right? They have that quick twitch vibe to them. You can normally tell that by the 10 split. When you see a guy that's putting up like a 1.58 as a receiver, 12 bench press reps, I'm going to say that the young man's probably faster than you think, and you can see that on the 2.6220 split, which is a good 20 split for a receiver. It's not horrible, and it certainly, surprised me when I saw the 1.5810 split in front of that. But it tells me this young man could use to get stronger when he was coming out of college, going into his pros. I don't know where he is currently, guys. I mean, he's been in the league for a few years. There's, all likelihood he could have clearly gained strength, but nonetheless, you could see elements of explosion, 35.5-inch vertical, 125-inch, broad jump, pretty good, solid numbers for a receiver. I'm not going to say that those are over the top or in any kind of elite category, but they're decent numbers. But the 1.58 is pretty bad with the 12 bench reps. Now, testing-wise, what does he remind me of? He kind of reminds me of a running back. I'm going to be real with you. He reminds me a lot of a running back. How so? Go take a look at Zeke's splits, guys, just the splits. Zeke ran a 4.4740, right? Zeke had a 1.5810 split and a 2.6220 split. The exact same numbers as Olamide. To me, this young man reminds me a lot of a kind of a running back. And he's got kind of that lateral movement ability to him as well. As you can see from the three-cone number, as you can see from the short shuttle number. That's what he reminds me of a little bit. I'm going to be honest about it. But we're bringing him in here to ultimately be a wide receiver. So what can I tell you about what the advanced analytics and the film say about his play? The first thing I'll say is, don't be deceived and think this young man can't get vertical. I think there's two conversations at heart here. The first order of the conversation is, if you're a coaching staff, are you looking at Olamide Zaccheaus and thinking to yourself, we got to find a way of making sure this guy doesn't get behind our safeties? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that this guy doesn't have a knack for doing exactly that, okay? Simply put, if you look at targets above 20 yards, and I know that you could get more specific than this, guys, if you wanted to go to somewhere like StatHead and filter by 25 yards plus to get into the actual explosive play rate that the coaches define it as. But PFF gives you a nice little easy number, 20 yards, that make it real easy to figure out. Plays above 20 yards, guys. He's got 11 targets, which was 60th overall. 4 receptions, 114 yards. He didn't put anything in the end zone last season, but had an 18% rate in terms of like the rate of targets he received over 20 yards compared to his total target rate, which ranked 63rd. So, I mean, no, he's not a top 50 player in terms of getting vertical, but he clearly has the ability to do it. I mean, he can beat you deep if you sleep on him. There's no doubt about it. What I think this young man is, where I think his game lies, is he's kind of slippery, man. He's a pretty good yak guy, to be quite honest, man. He's a little slippery, and you got to be careful because if you miss a tackle on him, he's going to make you pay for it. He's a guy that's not big. You know, he's not going to run you over. He's not a 220-pound guy. He's not A.J. Brown out there. You know, he's not one of these bigger physical receivers that can absolutely, you know, Mike Williams type that could just take you apart. But what he is kind of slippery. Like, you got to make sure you wrap him up and tackle him. He had 5.1 yards after the catch per reception. So you're looking at yak, you know, in terms of like per catch, which I think is a better filter to look at this by. That ranked 15th overall, guys. It was top 20 in the entire NFL in terms of that. Just to give you some heads up of some of the names here who he's tied with. He's tied with Mike Williams. He's tied with Devontae Smith, Scary Terry, and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 15th overall. Like, dude's got an ability, man, to break free from you. He can get you some yak. And I think that's pretty good when you're working inside of a system that depends upon spacing. The other thing I'll say about him is his yards per route run, surprisingly good. Surprisingly good. He's top 50, guys. 47th overall at 1.47 yards per route run. Yards per route run is a way that you can measure productivity. So this is a way of saying, like, okay, when this dude, he's not going to get his numbers called too much. We'll get into that point in a second. But when he gets his number called, can he produce on the football field, Steve? Historically speaking, he's done a pretty dang good job of doing that. 1.47, ranked 47th overall. Basically, what you're looking at is he's got the third most productive wide receiver in A.J. Brown, yards per route run. He had a 2.47. And then you got the 17th highest productive, production-based receiver, and Devontae Smith at 2 yards per route run. So 3, 17, and 47 now all in the building together. You got a group of guys that we don't know where the target shares are going to lie, but you can feel pretty dang confident that Dallas Goedert, who at one point was I think it was 2021, Dallas Goedert was the most productive tight end in the NFL. Now you got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and then you also have Olamide Zaccheaus, who's also a very productive guy. So when these guys get their turn, when it's their number, when their number gets called, you can kind of feel confident that they're going to take advantage of this situation. All right, target shares on the 2022 season. How did it work out in Philadelphia, and what would be the role? I'm going to give you the top 7 guys, all right? A.J. Brown had 145 targets. Devontae Smith had 136 targets. Dallas Goedert had 69 targets. Quez Watkins had 51 targets. Kenneth Gainwell had 29 targets. Miles Sanders had 26 targets, and Zach Pascal had 19 targets. This is a system that is very heavy on the 1, 2, and 3, but if you are the 4th guy, you can see pretty close to, I'd say, 40 to 60 targets. Just depends upon how the season goes, right? So I think the real question here for, looking at this young man is your target share, assuming you make the initial 53 and you're on this roster, is probably anywhere between 20 targets to 60 targets. And it's probably going to be upon what you do and what Quez does that determines where those numbers lie. You know what I mean? Like, you can have a pulling back to where both of these guys play a role and they kind of eat into each other's numbers. Or you can have one where the changing of the guard or Quez steps up and this guy doesn't get that much play actually in Philadelphia. It's hard to say. But what we can say is ever since Nick Sirianni has been here, so 2021 and 2022, we know that this is, generally speaking, it's a 3-man rotation in terms of the target share. They game plan for 3 guys to get them the touches, to get them the ball. And then your fourth guy will get some work here and there. It's just going to be a matter if he can work himself into the rotation to get above. Like I said, anywhere between 20 to probably 60 targets is what I would probably predict he's looking at. And there's a lot of variables that could, send him as 20 targets or send him as 60 targets. The last thing I will add here is he's had drop problems in the past. I know you're probably like, dude, like what the heck, man? We're dealing with this with Quez. I will say that be careful with this stuff, guys. Quez drop passes at the most inopportune moments, but his actual drop rate wasn't that high. Last season, Olamide Zaccheaus was credited with one drop, okay? One drop. However, the season prior, guys, he had 3 drops and an 8.8% drop rate. There's some things you can look at from a scouting standpoint, all right? When it comes to catching the ball, you're looking at 3 things, okay? The first thing that you're looking at when it comes to catching the ball is the physical attributes of the hand size, okay? To me, the line of demarcation is about 9 inches in your hand size, all right? Anything above 9.5 inches to me, you would probably say is like, oh, like that's a dude that has larger hands. Anything below 9 inches or below, you'd say is shorter hands. Olamide has an 8.75-inch hand measurement. Quez Watkins has exactly 9-inch hand measurement. But I want to preface this by saying this. That ain't the full story of this stuff, man. The second part of that is hand and eye coordination. It's that hand and eye coordination ability. Okay, there's dudes with smaller hands that don't have these type of problems. There's dudes with normal average hands that don't have these problems, and there's dudes with larger hands that drop balls all the damn time. So it's really hard to say. And of course, the third part is the technicalities behind catching a football, where your hands are supposed to be placed on the ball as you catch it, looking it in, catching away from your body instead of into the body. There's a lot of different things. Body positioning, a lot of different coaching points to that stuff, guys, to be quite honest. What I will say is this. If you look at the most productive players in the league, let's shake them out by how they rank in terms of hand size. You got big hand guys. Stephon Diggs, 10 inches. Keenan Allen, 10 inches. Amari Cooper, 10 inches. A.J. Brown, 9.75 inches, 9 3/4 inch. Cooper Kupp, 9.5 inches. Those 5 guys have huge hands, to be quite honest. Then you have the smaller hand receivers, or average. I'd say smaller to average, because some of this isn't fair. Some of these guys are more on the average side. Tyreek Hill, 8 inches. Devontae Adams, 9 inches. Jalen Waddle, 9 1/8 inch. Justin Jefferson, 9 1/8 inch. CeeDee Lamb, 9 1/4 inch. Devontae Smith, 9 1/4 inch, right? So these are smaller to probably average, right? I will say that CD and Devontae are definitely squarely in the average hand category. 9 1/4 is not something you're worrying about per se. But you can see these are not, I wouldn't classify them as having large hands either. Just because a receiver has smaller hands doesn't mean that they will have a problem with this. But you definitely want to go check the film if a guy is having. You want to go check the film. You want to go check the measurements to see. Quez Watkins has a 9-inch hand measurement. Olamide Zaccheaus has an 8 3/4 inch hand measurement. We'll see, guys. I mean, to me, you can shore this up just by having really good hand and eye coordination. You can shore this up by having proper, technique. How it plays out, anyone's guess, man. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all's time and attention, and I'll see you guys on the next video.